Everybody knows that one of the most important pieces of a hunter's kit is their knife. Whether you're looking for a fleshing blade, a skinning blade, or just a quality, multi-purpose knife for the backcountry, Yukon River Knives has what you need. They offer blades such as the Hunter, Small Game, and the Sendero Bush Knife. Yukon River Knives is based in Texas and has a unique mission goal in that a percentage of all knife sales go to support a missionary in Alaska. Now, Dalton, you've experience with these knives in the field. Talk to us about that.
As a matter of fact, I have used a few of their knives and watched my good friend Remy use them for years with great results. They have a micarta handle that doesn't get slippery when it gets wet, and they have phenomenal edge retention for long skinning jobs. Go check out our web link on thenorthernhunter.com, and that'll take you directly to Yukon River Knives website to see their full selection and order your knives for your next hunt with the discount code TheNorthernHunter at checkout. And remember, nothing replaces a quality hunting knife.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne, and I am happy to be back with you guys.
I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Ryan Humphreys.
And you guys have heard us talk a lot about hammer bullets and everything that they are capable of and do and why we love them so much. So we have the great pleasure of speaking with Steve Davis, the man behind the bullets today. And thank you so much for making some time for us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm glad to come spend some time with you.
Yeah, we know that the time difference is a little much in some areas of the country, so we always appreciate people willing to stay up and talk to us. So, you guys, I just wanted to point out, did a fantastic job while I was away.
Thank you.
So, really appreciated those episodes. And yeah,
no critiques this time.
No critiques this time. That's all I have to say. Is great job.
I think
thank you for carrying it out.
Yeah, those two guests were pretty easy to talk to.
Yeah.
Good stories.
Yeah.
Good times. But, yeah, it's good to have you back from Africa in one piece.
Yeah. It didn't feel like it was going to happen that way for a little while there. There were definitely some hiccups, travel wise, and
just take up residency.
I almost did. I almost did. I think Alaska Airlines was trying to keep me. It was trying to keep me in at first, and then it was trying to keep me. Yeah, it was just a interesting time in both directions. But the longest flights I've ever done, honestly. Yeah. It was 9 hours and 11 and a half hours, I think. Yeah. And then another 3 on top of that. It was just back to back to back. It was it was an adventure. I'll say that. And then,
longest one I ever done was 11 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that one a lot as a kid. Overseas.
Man, oh man.
That's a lot of flying, but it's also a lot easier when you're 12 or under, and time zones don't mean nearly as much because you just
go to sleep and teleport to another place.
Yeah, exactly. Now as an adult, even being on the East Coast a few weeks ago, coming home and losing and then gaining back 4 hours, I was out of whack for days.
Yeah,
it was strange.
The first time I really experienced jet lag was when I went over to Europe, and I got there, and I was like, "Man, it's noon. Why am I tired?" Why am I tired?
Well, just exhausted.
And I went to bed, and I think I slept like 12, 13 hours straight and got up the next morning with everybody else once we got back to where we were.
Yeah.
You know, I made the mistake. So we got back, and I didn't keep a schedule or even try to keep a schedule because I had scheduled like 5 days until I had to go back to work. Mm-hmm. And so I was just resting whenever my body told me I needed to rest, which...
So you stayed on Africa time.
Basically, unintentionally. I was like, I'll still try to sleep during the nighttime in Alaska. But what ended up happening was the day before I had to go back to work, I took a nap, an unintentional nap. I was really trying to stay awake until like 10 or 11. But I ended up going to sleep at 5. I woke up at 11, had some dinner, and then I was up from then until I had to go to work in the next morning. The whole next day. And then the next night after that, after my first day back at work, I slept for 12 hours straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was your rescheduling.
And since then, I've been okay.
Yeah.
But definitely learned a lesson. When you go 11 hours of time difference,
Yeah.
you got to make a schedule when you get back.
To force yourself.
It was insane.
Yeah.
But what's the longest flight? I know you've flown all over the place, Steve. What's the longest flight you've ever done?
No, not all over the place. We've been to Africa and Australia now. Africa is the longest one out of Atlanta, 17 hours. And I know the first time we went, it was, I didn't know what to expect. And all I know is we were about halfway there and I was thinking this was a bad
idea. Right?
Oh man.
I'm like, can we turn around? I'm looking at that little map on the.
How do we force an emergency landing?
And I'm like, this has been too long, and we're only halfway there. I don't know if I can do this.
Well, it's that Bermuda Triangle that gets you, Steve.
It is.
Oh, yeah. So each time we've gone, it's gotten easier. I've learned, I think, better how to suffer.
Right. Yeah. See,
and I, I know kind of what I'm expecting, so it's kind of like, okay, I just got to chill out and wait.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I've been debating for the next time I go over there, whether it would be better, because we went Fairbanks down to Seattle and then straight over to London. So that was the 9 hours, and then London to Joburg. And I've kind of been wondering if just getting it all out of the way in one fell swoop like that, like 15 hours, 17 hours, something like that would just be a little bit easier. I don't know, because I'm not going to lie, trying to navigate the London Heathrow Airport was probably the hardest part of the whole trip.
Really? Was it
honestly
pretty big, full of trams and stuff?
Well, during COVID, we did one like you did. The only airline that was going was Qatar.
Okay, gotcha.
And so we went to Seattle, to Doha, to Johannesburg. And, all total, it was almost 2 days. So I can't remember. It was 14 hours and then another 10 hours, I think, from Seattle to get to Johannesburg.
Right.
And it was just long, really long. That single flight for 17 hours is better.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of my thought behind it, was because especially on the way back, we went Port Elizabeth to Joburg, and then I think our layover there was like 7 hours.
In Joburg?
In Joburg.
No kidding.
And then we jumped on a plane back to London, and we were there for like 9 hours.
Wow.
In the airport. And then we went from there back to Seattle, and then we were there for like 4 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And just all of those layovers back to back like that, it extended it out. Our trip home was 3 days almost.
Yeah. Those just drag it out of you.
We left on the 30th of June, and we didn't get back till the 1st of February. So it takes up so much time. I mean, it was probably 15 hours of layover.
And
all
so
combined.
you were you gaining time back as you came to the States, or
losing?
Or losing?
So we were.
So you lost 11 hours.
It was kind of funny. We left London at 2:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And we got to Seattle at 4:30 p.m. the same day.
Wow.
It was only a 2-hour flight.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure that's what it felt like.
Yeah, that's how Australia was. I think Australia was like 2.5 hours from Australia to California.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But no, it was a good time. We shot a lot of animals, saw a lot of animals. It was, the way I described it to my wife was, it was like being in Yellowstone, but you could shoot. and the animals were different. It's like they're just everywhere.
I am all about turning Yellowstone into a hunting park.
Make different concessions.
I would love to see that happen. Just like I'm all about making Denali a shooting park.
Yeah. But it was a great, just the hunting over there is so different than anything we have here in Alaska. It's like, I almost coined the term to my wife. I was like, for people that don't live in either one, it's like you come to Alaska to have a challenging hunt. You know, out in the wilderness, you're toughing it out. You're
going
chasing this
for
big animal.
12 to 14 days to maybe shoot 1 or 2 animals.
You go to Africa to have a fun hunt. We saw so much game. We saw so many animals, so many different creatures, and like luckily we didn't really, at least my wife and I, we didn't really miss anything while we were over there. But if you did, it's not like it was the end of the world, because there's going to be another shot opportunity.
So many
an
opportunities.
hour later, and so
target rich environment.
Yeah, we'll definitely have.
I call it luxury.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the landowner we were staying with at the lodge. He commented on that. He's like, we don't sell hard labor. We're selling leisure. We're selling. This is your vacation. Like this is.
Right.
So I was commenting. I was like, I've never had a hunt go this easy. And like I've hunted, whitetails in Ohio and Kansas and all over, I've hunted here in Alaska for a long time. I was like, I've never, like, it's never been this fun. Like, I mean, it's always fun, but it's like, this is like next level fun. It's like we shot 1 or 2 animals a day, for 8 days straight. It was awesome. So I'm still working through all my pictures and everything and getting everything posted.
Sounds about like our last Southeast trip.
Yeah, honestly, From the sounds of what you guys are telling about. That's the most
fun hunt I think I've ever been on, just because it was just there were always animals.
Yeah.
It was always
and especially the way you
guys
guys are diversifying it now, between the duck hunting and the fishing and everything, because that was the cool thing there. We didn't just hunt. We went to the Addo Elephant Park. We did a day of shark fishing, all this different stuff. And so it was this nice breakdown.
It's always fun when you can do different things and just diversify your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch a shark?
Oh yeah. I caught 2 that I classify as sharks.
You classify?
One was a shark.
Did the biologist classify them as sharks?
So the last one I caught was about, 18 inches long, maybe 2 feet long. It was, I forget what they call them, jammies or pajama sharks or something like that, but it had stripes all on it and everything. Looked like it was wearing striped pajamas.
Okay.
We were catching, what they call them, snaggletooth. Off the coast there. I don't know if any of these are the official names or the local names, but
sure,
that's what they call them, was snaggletooth. And so we caught a couple of those. One of them was a fight, but I'll have to wait till we're gonna have a couple of guys on that were on the trip for an episode, maybe next week or the week after, if it works out, and we'll tell all the details there. But man, those things fight.
Yeah,
those things fight like crazy. And it was such a blast. And these PHs, bless their hearts, they're out there, and because you got to get past the surf to get to these sharks. And so one of them, Ricky, amazing guy.
Ricky
Brown, actually. Ricky Brown.
Close.
Yeah.
Close.
And so he was our PH over there. And this guy, he gets this, 12-foot long fishing pole with, a crazy conglomeration of bait at the end of it. And I mean, he's wading out there shoulder deep in this ocean water. And you can just see him, jumping up with the waves and coming back down. And then all of a sudden he steps up on this reef that he knew was there and just absolutely huckapucks this thing out into the middle of nowhere in the ocean, and then walks back.
Yeah.
And then he's doing that every single time.
Wow.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd be doing that.
Yeah,
but
no thank you.
That's their profession. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing time, though.
Yeah. Well, good.
But so anyway, I'm sure we'll talk more about Africa a little bit later, given some of the conversation. But so Steve, we've all enjoyed talking about hammer bullets and everything like that. And previous episodes, I'm sure you've probably heard some of the things we've said about them. One of the things I absolutely loved seeing this fall, though, was the big banner on the top of the website that says it's currently hunting season in Montana. And if we don't answer the phones, that's why, or something like that. It's something along how it went. And I just thought that was a perfect business model.
Yeah, well, when we first started getting busy, my partner Brian says, "How are we going to go hunting?" And I said, "Well, we didn't start this business to not hunt."
Exactly. You got to keep your priorities, right?
Yeah. Right. And so whenever we go, hunting here at home in Montana, or if we go somewhere, then I always put a banner up that says, "Hey, we're out hunting, and you might see a delay in your order." And I've never had anybody complain about it. I wind up getting emails from guys, "Hey, where's my order?" And then I finally see it, when I get back in 2 weeks, and I'm like, "Hey, sorry, I was gone hunting." They're like, "Oh, that's cool. How'd you do it?"
I was going to say, they probably had the exact response I did, where it's like, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense." That's more than willing to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If I told them, "Well, hey, I'm gone for a wedding," they'd be like, "What?"
Right.
Yeah, that is a lame excuse. Boring.
It's good when you share the same passion as your clientele. That makes it easy to get along, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've always thought that, I'm going to wind up with that guy that gets irritated because we were gone hunting and he wants bullets, but I don't think it's happened yet.
Good. How'd your season go?
Pretty good. We probably the highlight was we went and hunted elk in Idaho, and Brian got a big bull. He got a big 350.
Very nice.
350 nice. Bull. I shot a raghorn, but it was the season's short. There it was in eastern Idaho. It's only a week season, and we were just there for the last, I think, 4 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a push.
And so the last night, it was like, okay, I didn't spend all this money to not bring home meat, so I shot a small bull.
They all eat the same. That's
I was going to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, mine tastes a lot better than Brian's does. His is kind of tough.
I'm going to say, isn't that what all the internet trolls say? Well, you can't eat antlers.
It's the internet thing in the spoon and crock pot club.
Yeah, the spoon and crockett.
Yeah. So he got a wall trophy. I got a table trophy.
There you go.
Cool.
I will say some of the best moose I've ever eaten came off of a spike bull.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, no hate there for sure.
Best moose I ever had was a cow.
Oh, really? Yeah, I can see that.
Beautiful.
I can see that.
Pre-rut.
Yeah.
August, youth hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good.
I don't think I've ever eaten cow moose, to be honest with you.
It was good.
I might have to try
Can't
that.
say I have either.
I know cow caribou tastes really good.
I have. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What were you and Brian shooting on that elk hunt, Steve?
I was shooting a 7 PRC with the 170 grain HHT.
Okay.
The new tip bullet. And Brian was using a 6.8 Western with the 160 grain HHT.
Very nice.
I assume by the results that they both worked.
Yeah. In fact, we were actually talking about it today. I don't remember why it came up, but yeah, that Brian's shot wasn't very far. It was like 150 yards, but he was running. He was trying to he had walked in to where Brian was and saw him and was leaving, and Brian shot him while he was on the getaway.
Okay.
And he still only made it maybe 50 yards.
Wow. Good. Very nice.
And just shut him down.
Those moving shots can be tough for sure.
Yeah, I know. I had to praise him a little bit. Neither one of us have ever really done that kind of stuff.
Those are surprising when they work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he did it. He did it well. He shot him. He got him right behind the shoulder. So double lunged him on the runaway shot.
Perfect.
Yeah.
How does he like that 6.8 Western overall as a cartridge?
I think he likes it all right. It's like a lot of these new cartridges. I think the 6.8 Western is kind of a 270 with new lipstick.
Yeah.
7 PRC is kind of the 7 mag with a new lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
But they bring out these new rifles or these new cartridges, and they put faster twist barrels on them so that they can run some heavier, longer bullets. Right. Where if they just start making faster twist on the old 270 and then start making ammunition to go with it, then that guy that's had his 270 since, the 60s is going to go, well, I want to run that 168 grain bullet.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out
And
very well.
he's going to go shoot it in his old 270 and they'll shoot sideways and he won't understand why.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So really the only way to I think do it well is a new cartridge. That's how the Creedmoor came around.
Yep.
They put 8 twists in them instead of the 9 that was traditional in the 6.5s. And the 270 10 twist, very relatively slow. Well, now they've got an 8 twist in a factory rifle, and they can run some heavier bullets.
Yeah.
And throated differently for those longer bullets too, and longer magazines.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of people write in asking questions about different calibers and different cartridges and things like that. And that's one of the things you kind of always have to constantly remind people is like a 300 Win Mag and a 300 PRC. It's apples to oranges. You can't. I mean, it's two different intents, two different purposes. And like, yeah, the one guy's going to argue you could get the same performance out of a custom 300 Win Mag, but you can do that out of a factory 300 PRC.
Exactly.
With the heavier bullets and the different styles and the faster twist rates. You don't have to customize anything right off the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's really when all these new cartridges first started rolling out back in the day. I mean, it almost kind of annoyed me. I'm like, kind of the same thing. I'm like, well, why didn't they just customize the rifles that are existing? But like you said, you don't want to be creating that kind of a setup where you can put the wrong ammo in the wrong rifle.
Right.
You've seen. I'm sure there's plenty of mishaps that happen with 4570. People putting plus P loads in older 4570s that they're not supposed to.
Sure.
So.
Or putting standard 30-06 ammo in an M1 Garand. That's why there's marketed labeled M1 Garand 30-06 because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to function in that rifle.
What barrel length does he have on that 6.8 Western? Do you remember?
His 24, I think. I can't remember for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I did a 26 on my PRC.
Okay.
I think his is just a tad shorter.
24. You know what velocity?
Hang on, I got a journal.
Oh, there you go.
I like it.
And I've been thinking about adding something along those lines to my arsenal because we were shooting a 270 WSM over there in Africa, and
it works pretty good.
Smacked the daylights out of some stuff. I'll say that.
That 270 and 284, I think, is a really good middle ground between the 6.5s being a little bit small for some of the heavier mid-size big game, but the 30s, sure, they'll work fine.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to deal with the recoil and you want a little flatter trajectory, easier to swap guns in between people, if you want to have your wife shoot one. That 284 the 284 is probably still my favorite bore diameter, just as a personal hunting rifle.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you can get such high BC bullets. It's so easy to shoot. And it just flat out works. I've never had an animal walk away from a 7 Rem mag put in the right spot.
7mm is phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm heavily considering getting a 7 PRC this year. Getting into that, but
that'd be interesting.
We'll talk more about that later on. Mo and I have some testing to do with a few projects, and if those go well, then there's a good chance that I'll end up putting a 7 PRC together this year.
Nice.
That's kind of where I'm leaning. But
so Brian's rifle, we used ADG 7 SAUM brass, fire formed it to the Western, and fed 215 match primers with reloader 26. The top end load is running right at 30-50 average.
That's pretty good.
With the 160.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It's real nice.
Yeah.
That's a HHT.
So the 160 grain HHT.
Nice.
So, we've been kind of playing the fast light for caliber game for several years and because it works great. But we're starting to get this reputation that you have to run hammers fast, and that's not true. Right. You just can run them fast.
Right.
So, much of when we choose cartridges and bullets that we're going to hunt with, it's, thinking about, okay, the promotional end of it, this is what we did this year. And so last year we decided, okay, well, let's, the 6.8 Western and the PR7 PRC, the kind of the new kids on the block, the hot ticket, and then run them with some heavier for caliber bullets. And go, hey, look, see, the hammers work good at traditional velocities very well too.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah. But I think personally, unless you're really truly shooting long range, lighter, faster bullets do work better. Assuming you have a bullet that can hold up to the impact.
Right.
Which is the hard part for most of the lead cores.
Right. And so that's how we all got marketed heavy, right? Because, it wasn't too many years ago, launching bullets over 3,000 feet per second was sketchy. It may or may not survive the launch. And then if you had that animal that popped up under 100 yards and you hit him with it, there was a pretty good chance it wouldn't survive the impact. So the solution is heavier, which slows it down. Plus, if you have that short range shot, you've got more bullet to not disintegrate. You got a better chance of not having that bullet come undone and still get some penetration. Well, we don't have either of those issues. We don't have launch velocity issues and bullets coming undone in flight, and we don't have issues with bullets not handling the impact velocity. So speed kills.
Yeah.
Roy Weatherby was right. When he set out to make the Weatherbys, it was coming home from a hunt and having poor results with slow bullets and going, no, I think we need to run faster for better terminal performance. And, that's how he began his journey, was trying to figure out how to run that higher velocity and hunt with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it is a phenomenal point, because I know that what was that Jay was running? He had the 300.
I think he had a 3378.
3378. That's what it was. And our buddy, we both. I used to work with, and you see it work sometimes. Had a 3378, and with 180 grain AccuBonds, I think, from Nosler, he actually breached the warranted limit, to where when he called and said, hey, I'm not getting good accuracy, and they're like, well, what are you running? They basically told him they couldn't warranty the bullet. I think it was anything over 3,200 feet per second.
3,200 feet per second.
There was a cutoff there, where even as a bonded bullet, it was, you can go too fast for that, and it'll just
smash it.
It'll just have a come apart as soon as it goes inside. So,
so
that is a phenomenal point, and that's I think an awesome take onto what the need for bullets like this is, especially with some of these older cartridges where you can really get them zinging out there.
I remember it wasn't very well, 20 years ago or so, that the dream of running 3,000 feet per second, was in a hunting rifle. That just seemed way out there, and now, if we're not running 3,000 feet per second, now I feel slow.
Right.
Because most of the stuff we run is in the 32 to 3,600 with the rifles we set up. Talking in our conversation today, Brian's rifle in the 6.8 Western, he's running that 160 grain at, what did I say, 30-50. But he also runs the 122 grain HHT out of it at 3,400.
Wow.
And for hunting out to 600 yards, I'll take that 122 grain all day long.
Probably your max point blank range at that speed.
Yeah, not quite that far. but for about 400, with the right zero.
Right. Right.
And that's that's kind of how I set my rifles up. I set them up for the max point blank range capability. So I start looking at what I can get out of each bullet, velocity wise, and what's my best max point blank range capability,
Mm-hmm.
Based on a 10-inch radius, which covers the kill of a deer, and so when you start getting into those mid 3000s for velocity, then yeah, you can out to 400, 425 yards, you can hold dead zero and not adjust your hold, and out to 500 yards, you're holding top of the back. So you're holding hair to 500 yards
Right.
without having to do any real thinking.
Yeah.
For me, that's just, I get the range. If it's less than my max point blank range, all I've got to do is concentrate on shooting.
Right.
I don't have to think about drop.
Yeah. Is your dial right? Is any of this other stuff right?
Yeah. How much do I need to hold up? How much should I dial? What do I need to do? So out to 400 yards, being able to do that, I think makes a guy pretty lethal.
Yeah.
And if it's farther than that, hopefully they don't know you're around and you've got plenty of time to figure it all out.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so nice to just figure out, okay, all I've got to figure out is where am I going to get my rifle so that I can get steady. And then all I've got to do is concentrate on breaking the shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is a phenomenal point, because so many people, especially if you live in an area where the shot opportunities are few and far between, when you get to that situation, I mean, your brain is going a million miles an hour. This is what you've been working for, getting to this position, this animal, it's legal, it's go time, and there is arguably when you're using one of those dialed turret scopes and you're having to set up a whole bunch of stuff to get on that animal. I mean, it's a lot to remember in the moment. And certain animals, like, caribou, for instance, don't stand still for very long. So I know we've talked before, always trying to zero at, like, you said, 200 yards, just kind of to extend that max point blank out.
Yeah, I'm zeroed at 250 with those 168 HHTs on my 300 short mag.
Are you really? And
my max, I go up 2.5 inches and then back down to that, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
What's
that put you out to at when you drop the 2.5 inches?
Probably 325.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember, but
but still holding on hair.
But out to 300, you're holding dead on.
Oh yeah,
all day long. Yeah,
which is over. What
have you guys played with the JBM ballistics? It's an online calculator.
That's what I use.
That one will, you put your dope in and it will calculate your max point blank range. And your max point blank range 0. So if you do your zero work, say at 200 yards, and get spot on, then put your dope into the JBM, and it will tell you that, say your max point blank range 0 is 367 yards. Right? And so you can look at it and go, okay, I've got to dial up 3.5 MOA. I'm just pulling all these numbers out of my rear. But you dial up 3.5 MOA and then carry your rifle there. So you're dead nuts now at 367, but you're inside that 5-inch radius, so your high point is around 200 yards. You're hitting 5 inches high, and then they're at 420 yards, you're 5 inches low. So as long as it's less than 420 yards, you're going to make that 5-inch radius holding center mass.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, for probably 85% plus of all hunting shots, even up here in Alaska, most people aren't shooting much past 300 yards on a consistent basis.
And honestly, you don't have to.
No.
We talk about long range all the time on this show, and we've all shot animals at long range. You included, Steve. I know we've talked on the phone before about some longer range shots and whatnot. And but honestly, it's fun getting in close.
It is a lot of fun.
Even over there in Africa where I was, I think I shot my spring buck at 440, 450, somewhere in there.
That's long in Africa.
Right. But it was almost like I had more fun shooting an Impala at 90. or
Yeah.
or a pig at 30.
You feel like you're in their kitchen.
Yeah, it was just a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And obviously there, again, shot opportunities are more prevalent.
Yeah.
Can't be as picky in Alaska sometimes, which is why it's nice to be able to shoot long range, because if it's last day of moose season and you see one 600 yards away, it's nice to know you can make that poke. But at the same time, I think inside 500 is where I like to keep it these days, and it just seems to be a little bit more fun that way for me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's like I tell all my brown bear clients. I've had a few guys ask, well, what's our maximum shot distances? And some of them, I've had a couple of guys that have brought some guns that are fully capable of killing out to 500-600 yards. Some of these real sleek rifles, which you don't need for coastal brown bear hunting. But they'll ask that question, and I say, well, our max shots are, in an ideal world, we're trying to be 100 yards or less. And that's just part of the fun. It's a dangerous animal. You don't want to have too many variables with a long shot and wounding it. And you want that bear to get the maximum effect of your bullet and the velocity at close range. And I want the maximum chance of you making a good shot.
Absolutely.
So just get in close. And to me, that's most of the fun.
Especially, I would think, dealing with clients that may have never seen a brown bear before.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Little extra excitement.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Well, let's take a break real quick. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. You've got, let's back up just a quick minute here. So you've got a fairly long, extensive history in hunting. Been doing it for a while now. So tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about what prompted the start of Hammer Bullets. What made you decide, you know what, none of these options are good enough, and kind of just go off and make a newer, better, improved version of what you were using? Because I love hearing the backgrounds to every bullet manufacturer, and so I'm sure you. Yeah,
so you kind of hit it there. Brian and I grew up hunting. So from kids on, and I don't know, we met 25 years ago and started hunting together. And we're of like mind, and we were always looking for that better bullet, trying to find that bullet that would make our deer nice and dead, but not blow him to pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that was kind of our motivation. Both grew up, if dad didn't do well hunting that year, we didn't have a lot of meat, and so when we learned to hunt, it was like, okay, behind the shoulder, you don't get too close to the shoulder. We don't want to lose that meat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's how we both grew up hunting. And, so making that shot on a deer and putting it where it needed to go, but still losing shoulder meat, just violated.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I didn't hit the shoulder, but I've got all this destroyed meat that I've got to throw away.
It's valuable stuff.
And so we were those weird guys that would go to the range and set up milk jugs and shoot bullets and catch them to see what they do and that kind of stuff.
I don't know anybody like that.
So in that process, we found copper bullets, and found that they didn't they don't damage as much meat because they don't fragment in so many tiny little pieces. They're more, the fragmentation of a copper is bigger pieces.
Yeah.
And so a lot less meat damage. And so we liked that, and we shot several other copper bullets on our way to here, but everything had some sort of an issue, whether we couldn't get it, or it, didn't do what we wanted it to do, that kind of thing. And so we wound up buying a lathe and putting it in my garage and set out to make it. And we still joke about it. If we had it to do over again, I don't know that we would. It was hard. We just thought, we assumed so much stuff, but we just thought if we just got the most pure copper, that would make the best bullet, right? And so we did. We ordered up pure copper, and it didn't work.
Right.
Everything works really good at high velocity. It's when the velocity starts getting lower,
right,
that's when things get hard.
Yeah.
Get difficult to get that bullet to do what it needs to do. And I mean, a funny story with that, I said we assumed a lot of stuff, so we're making these bullets, and we had this design, and we're out shooting them, and it's working great. And we hunted that fall. We shot on our website, there's a picture of me and Brian sitting on a tailgate of a pickup with a truck full of elk and deer. And that was the first hunting season with hammer bullets. And our group, we shot, I don't remember, 6 or 8 elk and a half a dozen deer.
Wow.
And it was quite a trip, and everything worked great. It was all flawless, and I shot an elk that year at like 600 yards, and it worked great. And, and we'd been online, more or less announcing this is what we're going to do. We're getting, we're figuring this out, and we're going to launch the company and all this stuff, and this guy got a hold of me, from an online magazine in California, and wanted to write an article. So of course I'm jumping all over that. I sent him bullets, and, anyway, I hadn't heard back from the guy. And so I got a hold of him and asked him, how it was going. And he said, "Oh, well, I gave those bullets to some other guys. I just don't have a big enough gun to run them." And I was like, "Yeah, just like you just did." What? What? What do you mean? And, so he tells me he had a milk jug test that he would do, and to this day still we use that same test. But he'd set up a gallon milk jug of water with a box of newspaper behind it to stop the bullet. And he was shooting the milk jug at 100 yards or something, I don't remember, but the bullet wouldn't open. Right? And he was shooting him out of a 30-06, and his impact velocity was like 2,500 feet per second. And the bullets weren't deforming. And I was like, oh, how can that be? And then we started going through all the kills we did that year, and we never had an impact velocity lower than 2,700.
Ah, gotcha.
And so they worked great,
right.
And this is one of those things that, I look back at it and go, God is great, because if he hadn't done that, we would have launched our website with those bullets, and we wouldn't be here today.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, we actually had our website ready to turn it on. We were ready to go, okay, we're going live. Had pictures up, we had all the bullets ready, and we hit the skids, and went and duplicated his test, and sure enough, they didn't work. And so we had to hit the skids and start over, redesign bullets, find different material, and then launch the website.
Right.
And at that point in time, we still didn't have the material that did what we wanted. We had this ideal of what we thought a bullet should do, and it was for any of your viewers that are terminal ballistic geeks. They can look up shooting holes in the wounding theory. Just type it in online.
Yep.
It'll pull up Rathcoombe's physics paper. Yep. And so, as a bullet geek, I had read that paper. It took me a whole weekend. I bet some guys can do it faster than that, but it took me a whole weekend to read it.
It's not really an easy read either, Steve.
What's it called again?
Shooting holes in the wounding theory.
Yeah, I'll link that in the description of this episode.
There you go.
Yeah. So anybody that's a geek, it's a worthwhile read. And we based our bullet design on his theory of how a bullet kills, and what creates the greatest wound channel after the bullet impacts. And so that's what we were trying to do. And we thought that would, just get good pure copper. That would be easy to do, and it wasn't. And we wound up using another copper that did it, but not really as good as what we wanted. But we needed to try and get some money out of this lathe that we put in my garage. Right. It's kind of like we need to sell some bullets. And so we launched the website, and that's another great story too. I was so afraid when we launched the website that the orders were going to come in so fast that there was no way we could keep up.
Right.
And I was scared spitless, because I just thought everybody was like us, and the next shiny object. Oh yeah, I got to try that. Yeah. The shooting hunting world is very fickle. They don't change course very fast at all.
They get very brand loyal, very, very hardcore.
Oh boy. Yeah. I had no idea. We launched our website and we got one order the first night. One order.
That's
order of a box of.
I was gonna say that's pretty good
50
actually.
Bullets.
I'm not gonna lie.
I know that's the gal that made our website. She's like, "That's awesome," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?
It's not gonna pay the rent."
We still have one lousy box of bullets. Oh yeah. So anyhow, so there's a shout out to Rich Coyle. Hopefully he'll see this. He was our first customer.
Nice.
And he still buys bullets, and great guy. But yeah, he was our very first customer. And yeah, that was it was it was rough in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
We I think just stubborn enough to not quit. I think most people would have quit. There was 2 or 3 years there where Brian was working his full-time job as a carpenter. I sold my landscaping company, liquidated it, shut it down so that I could go run this hammer bullet thing. And, Brian paying me out of his paycheck so that I could make my house payment.
Wow. No.
I don't know if it was harder on him or harder on me,
Right.
Call him up and say, "Hey, Brian, I got to make a house payment."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, all right." He write me a check, and never balked at it.
Yeah.
But we did that for a few years.
Yeah.
And made it through that, and pretty soon the company was starting to pay its own way.
Yeah.
And then started paying our way, and neither one of us have a day job anymore. This is it.
Perfect.
Very well.
And about 3 years ago, as an entrepreneur, it's very hard to say, I think we made it.
Right.
And it's still really hard. It's still really hard to say.
Yeah. Because there's always the next step, the next level to get to.
Right, and it's still. I mean, we're still swinging at the ball. As long as somebody will throw it, we'll swing at it. But we're still scrapping for what we can get. But yeah, about 3 years ago, we started going. Okay, I think the snowball might be going down the other side of the hill.
Yeah.
We got it. We pushed it over the top.
Yeah.
And I think we're not pushing anymore. It's rolling. We're just trying to make sure we keep up with it.
Yeah.
Well, and especially for the industry you're in, like if you were to be making hunting clothing, ultralight hunting clothing, you've got your Sitka guys and your Kuiu guys and your Stone Glacier guys, but like every gear nut is going to see, ooh, new jacket. New rain gear. I'll try that. Why not? I still have this. But specifically when it comes to bullets, whether you're a Nosler guy, a Barnes guy, a Swift guy, a Hornady guy, like, nothing kills like this does. Yeah. Nothing will kill the way this does. Right. You guys,
there is so much.
You boys and your burgers, you're just wounding animals. It's like, and so you get a lot of ego involved in it.
So much ego involved.
They're so
in the
invested in their one. It's almost like,
this is how my dad did it. And that's how I did it. It's always worked really good.
So you come out with a new bullet, and it's almost like rather than being excited, they're like, "Oh, we got to prove these wrong.
And
we got to prove
back." Yeah. There's a lot of pushback in the bullet world.
There's a bit of that. That happens. And so we have the hater club. And so I have to kind of take it, I guess, as a badge of honor. I guess when you get to that point where you got people that don't like you just because you're doing well.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a badge of honor.
Well, if everybody's happy with what you're doing, then you're doing something wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to find people that use them that don't like them. There's probably some out there, but not very many.
Nobody in this room will tell you that.
Let me ask you this: of the people who don't like hammer bullets, do they? And I don't even know if you know this, but do they tend to be more of the lead core people or other monolithic people, like Barnes people or something like that? If you even know that info?
No, they're lead core guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. The lead core guys that believe in, bullet energy dump.
Yeah.
Where the bullet goes in and it totally explodes, and you drop all the energy, and that's how you kill animals. And it doesn't. They make a pretty good wound right off the get go, but boy, they have a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And energy dump isn't it? It's a wound channel that makes a wound.
Well,
and that bleeds out nicely.
And that's the hardest part, honestly, is finding that channel. Both combined. Because you can't have too thin of a wound channel either. And so you kind of have to have. You can't have a bullet that holds together too good, and you can't have a bullet that comes apart too good either.
Yeah.
And so all the testing I've seen of them, it's comparable in what you would call energy dump. Almost to an AccuBond, like a bonded lead core bullet.
Yeah.
But it's longer.
Yeah.
Like from everything I've seen, and so it carries further into the vitals, further into the animal and creates that extra depth of trauma,
Yeah.
Well, where that gets really important is, hardly ever, and you guys know this, you guys get to shoot more animals than most people. Hardly ever is that animal actually dead broadside.
Yeah.
They look like it, right?
Right.
They're broadside, but they're almost always angled a bit, and then you get to them and it's like, oh, I guess he was angled more than I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those angled shots, or those shots where we need to, get in that last rib and get to the far shoulder, where we actually need to get, the 2.5 feet of penetration.
Exactly.
Right.
That's where it gets really important, or those shots that are quartering two, and you wind up taking on a shoulder bone, because you hit, 3 inches farther left than you were aiming.
Yeah.
And you actually take right on that bone.
Yeah.
That's a tall order for a lead core bullet.
It
to
is.
be able to do that, right?
A lot of cases.
And then you got a train wreck, and now you're tracking and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And you guys understand the tracking thing. You don't get paid to track; you get paid to hunt, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just for our listeners, just to clarify exactly how you ended up on the design that you did with the hammer expansion and shedding of the pedals, and the terminal performance is what you guys focused on the most, right? You had shot lead cores, and then you said that you had tested a lot of copper bullets and you weren't quite satisfied. So maybe just go into some detail about what your ideals were when you started building your first bullets, and then what you wanted them to do performance-wise once they hit game.
Yeah, so what we knew we wanted is we wanted that nose to peel back like the banana, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 petals.
Okay.
We don't score our bullets or broach them or anything like that to make them peel specifically. We just have a hole that's exactly in the center, and the bullet will decide, but it's usually four petals that they open up. In the beginning, all we knew is we wanted them open and we wanted them to shed.
Mm-hmm.
And our focus was the retained shank.
Right.
We didn't give a rip about that shed weight. Didn't matter to us. We just knew we wanted it off, and we wanted that retained shank to be flat and square on the front, kind of like if you shot a flat base bullet backwards.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And the old timer that taught me how to reload was an Alaskan, and they used to shoot flat base bullets backwards on the big bears.
Yep.
So they would load their flat bases backwards, and that's what they used for hunting bear.
Yep.
And so I knew about that, and the shooting holes in the wounding theory. So it was all about that flat square front, so that it would straight line penetrate.
Yep.
And that flat square versus a rounded mushroom, the double caliber mushroom, right? That's what what everybody's goal has always been.
Yeah.
But it's nice and round, and that kind of parts its way through that soft tissue, versus a smaller flat square that pushes material perpendicular to the direction that it's going.
Yeah.
So you actually create a larger wound with a smaller frontal because it's flat and square.
Yeah.
So that was what we were after. That was our goal, and then along the way we started noticing what was going on with this shed weight and what it was doing, so then we started paying attention to it, and then tailoring or fine tuning the bullets to, okay, well, gee, that shed weight looks pretty good. Maybe we should shed more, and so we've been on both sides of what I think is perfect, where we were shedding a little too much and not shedding quite enough. There's kind of there's a spot there in the center where it performs best. We found that if we, with the copper that we use, we can control our weight retention based on hollow point depth, and it stays the same whether it's high or low velocity. So, if that hollow point depth is at the point where it retains 60% of its weight, it'll do it throughout that range of impact. But make it go a little deeper and retain, say, 50%, right? And shed 50%. Well, what we found is the process of opening and shedding more weight takes longer. So this stuff all happens in fractions of a second, right?
Right.
Yep.
But it takes longer for that to happen, and that robs that projectile of forward momentum or velocity.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't have as much velocity left after the shed, so the wound gets smaller.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem with those energy dump bullets, the ones that come undone.
Yeah.
And then they lack wound after that. So you wind up with a small wound, big one in the beginning, and then very little after that.
Right. Very shallow.
And yes. And so by keeping that velocity, then we can create a bigger wound. Probably the best way I've come up with to explain it to people is, my magic bullet theory. If I could make a magic bullet, this is what it would do. It would have its ballistic form and fly through the air. And when it hits the animal, then it would instantly turn into its terminal form and then pass through that animal and not lose a single foot per second.
Right.
Right.
Because the size of the hole that it makes is a function of how fast it's traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So as a bullet gets slower, that hole gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So those guys that say that a bullet should be caught in the hide on the opposite side, that's perfect, right? Well, they don't have sensors in them that say, okay, I'm trucking along through the vital tissue. Oh, I'm on the other side. I'll stop now.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't have brake sensors.
Yeah.
Right.
It just runs out of gas. Yeah.
And then, the bullet that enters 3 inches and then comes undone. Well, they don't have sensors on how far they've gone in either. That's a function of how fast it's going when it hits.
Right.
How far it takes for it to open up and shed. And so the that theory of dump and whatnot, it just doesn't work. So that magic bullet that goes all the way through and never loses a single foot per second makes the largest wound channel of anything.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to replicate, which isn't possible, but that's what we're after.
Right.
Getting as close as you can to that product. Yeah. And I would say you guys have done a dang good job from everything I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, the penetration you get off these things at again, comparable to other bullets. I mean, it's just it's really phenomenal stuff.
Yeah. So then basically the design of the hammer bullets, whether it's an absolute hammer, a hammer hunter, a shock hammer, the basis of all of your bullet designs is to enter, immediately shed the petals as quickly as possible, which then allows for that flat-nosed shank to continue on with as much velocity as possible through the animal. And then in an ideal world, punch a hole in the offside and have plenty of velocity left over to just keep on going right through that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So all of our hunting bullets are designed to open and shed.
Yeah.
And that flat retained front. So we've got all these different kinds of bullets, and it gets a little confusing, and we've made too many.
No, you
but so
I love it.
We've got what I kind of figure we've got three main lines of bullets. The shock hammer, the hammer hunter, and now the new HHT, the polymer tip bullet. And then there's that absolute hammer, which is kind of a wildcat. I leave it out there as it's a little bit of an outlier because it's different. It doesn't behave as far as loading like a traditional bullet. The engraving pressure is so low on it. It doesn't line up with traditional data. It takes more powder and faster powder to get to pressure. So it's a little bit out there, and I've got a note on the website that says, hey, if you're not comfortable going out and developing a load without any supporting data, leave this one alone.
Right.
If you're comfortable going out and figuring it out and loading a Wildcat cartridge that nobody's loaded before, then you're going to be fine loading the absolutes. So the Hammer Hunter was our first, longer range design bullet, designed with some BC in mind. We're trying to get decent BC out of it. And then the Shock Hammer is just designed to be that perfect normal range hunting bullet that is flawless.
It's probably my favorite bullet that you make is the Shock Hammer.
Yeah, and it fits exactly what you're doing, especially with the bears.
Yep.
So it's a larger hollow point, blunt nosed bullet.
Yep.
Kind of designed along the lines of that A-frame type bullet.
Yep.
And it will retain a little bit more weight than the Hammer Hunters or the HHTs.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes not as good a thing. There's gives and takes to that shedding and not of more or less weight.
Sure.
There's just a shorter nose bullet, and all of our bullets are designed to shed basically to the shoulder, where the nose meets full caliber.
Right.
Is where we run the hollow points to. And then the HHT, the polymer tip, which is the new line that we launched this last June. And I guess I get to eat a bunch of crow over this because I was the guy that was very vocal that there would never be a tip in a hammer bullet. Because we tried it. We were long range guys before we ever started making bullets. We were playing the long range hunting game. And so we were chasing the BC, and after that, and we tried tips on several occasions, and just like our very first bullet, they work really good at high velocity, but then when you get down to low velocity, then they start having issues. And that tip is a plug in the hole that has to get out of the way to get fluid in the hole so the bullet will open up from the inside out.
Right.
And our current tip is no different. It's still a plug in the hole that's got to get out of the way. Right. And so, I said we'd never have one because we couldn't get them to work as good as our open hollow point. And, a good buddy of ours was out visiting. We'll give him a shout too, because he gets a little credit because he's the one that forced us to do it. Dallas Hardaway. Here's to you. He's out visiting. He's like, "Oh, you guys got to do this. You got to do it." And we're like, "Yeah, no, we've tried that. It doesn't work. We're not doing it." And so we kind of set out to prove to him that it wouldn't work. And
I love it.
So this time, the tips that we got a hold of and the material they're made out of and the way they're shaped and the way we married the bullet to that tip, we started shooting them and it's like, hey, this is working. So we started hunting with them and then got them out to people that can shoot way more animals than we can and get them, everything works good in gel. Animal testing is where it really, that's when you find out if they work.
Right.
And so about a year of testing, in Africa and Australia and here at home, we didn't really count, but I'm sure at least a couple thousand animals shot with HHTs before we were convinced that it was going to be good.
I remember we were talking on the phone, and this was shortly before the release of the HHTs, and you told me a catchphrase you wish you could put on the bullets if you could find a way. I won't say it unless you're comfortable with it, but it was hilarious along those lines.
Because you see all that stuff out there. No animals are harmed in the testing of this product. Yeah, well, ours is heavily animal tested.
Which in this industry,
that's what
that's
it takes.
what you want.
That's what you want. Yeah. Well, just like Roy Weatherby, after he came back from his hunts and said, "I'm not getting good enough kills. This is not what I like." The first thing he did was built some rounds and built a couple of guns, and then went back to Africa time and time again, because that's that's like your driving range of the hunting world, because you can shoot so many animals in such a short amount of time.
I straight commented that exact thing to my PH when I was over there. I was like, it makes perfect sense. I've always wondered, like,
why
when I'd see any bullet developers over there testing ammo, I'm like, man, that's an expensive trip just to test if a bullet works, I mean, man, my goodness, you're paying the airfare and the lodge fee and the guide fee and all this other stuff just to go shoot a different kind of animal with your bullet, but
it's shooting the number.
But it's the numbers, and they're tough.
Oh yeah,
African animals are tough.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a will to live like you've never seen before,
Yeah.
and
They have a different will, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
But it's the shot opportunities. I mean, you could test a bullet 10 times a day if you were out there, you know, in a good on a good piece of land with a good pH. Like, I mean, if you're just hunting a cull package and you're not picky about what you're shooting, I mean, all day long, you know. So
you're shooting to test performance on the real thing.
Yeah. See, we go over there with 6 guys shooting, you know, and we get, you know, in a week's time, you know, we get 50, 60 animals.
Right.
You know, and you can't get anywhere near that here.
No. Right.
Yeah.
Drawing, you know, tags and points
Right. And we can get that done in a short period of time. So you're looking at wound channels, one right after another, you know, so everything's fresh in your head, you know, and it's all right there at the same time.
Yeah. You're not referencing pictures from last year's elk or anything like that.
Yeah. So now you can start seeing patterns of what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, versus, okay, I shot that deer last year, and when I shot the one this year, I think they kind of did the same thing, or they didn't do anything close to the same, but it's now, you know, you've got a year and only 2 animals, and it's really just a one-off.
Right. Yep.
You know,
you got a much larger.
You haven't gathered any data.
Much larger data set when you can shoot that many animals in that span of time.
I'm glad you guys developed the HHT. I think that's my favorite bullet.
I'm very excited about them. You know, again, I got to eat that crow because I said it wouldn't work, and we've actually got them working better than the Hammer Hunter. And you know, and so I can very honestly say I think we set a bar for terminal performance with the Hammer Hunters. You know, across the industry, I think we with that bullet, we've got a better overall wounding capability, or I shouldn't say wounding here, I should say terminal performance capability, than anything else out there. And now we come out with this HHT, and it's actually a level higher. It's a little bit better than that Hammer Hunter, you know, particularly in the low to mid impact velocity. So from that 2,000 to 3,000 foot per second impact, which is more or less where everybody's hunting velocities are. You know, your average guy that's out there shooting a gun that's starting out at 3,000 feet per second, his impacts are right there.
Right.
You know, from 2,000 to 3,000 feet per second, he's in that window.
Unless you're stretching out a long ways, 90% of hunters,
and then also the HHTs, I'm very comfortable giving them a 1,700 foot per second minimum impact for full deformation and shedding of the nose. Not that it rolled back a little bit. We go, hey, see, look, it expanded. It's good.
Yeah.
Which I will say is one of the biggest problems with the like lead core industry, and even honestly other monometal bullets. The barns are really notorious for that, where, you know, once you start pushing those lower levels, they'll flower, but they're not full expansion, you know, and even things like you know, I hate to dog anything about them because, you know, used them for a long time, but Accubons, you know, like even those you hit towards that 1,800 feet per second, and it'll expand, especially if you hit something hard, you know. But I mean, it's not going to be anywhere near what is shown in pictures and stuff, what you're expecting it to be.
Well, if you look at a lineup of photos, and let's just take a Barnes bullet, and of shot into ballistics compound, right?
Yeah.
And if you have one that's shot in there at 3,000, then you might shed a petal or two. You know, it overly deforms. And then at 2,800, it's got all 4 petals, and they're peeled all the way back to the bottom of the hollow point. And then you get down to 2,000 feet per second, and that expansion goes less and less and less farther down those petals, and you just get the smaller and smaller and smaller expansion until, you know, minimum impact velocity, say, is 1,700 feet per second. Well, sure, it does expand, but like you said, it loses the blue tip and then it peels just a touch back.
It's a little
and,
flower. At
hey,
the end
you
of
got
that
expansion,
thing.
and that's
It's a bud.
that's
It's a bud,
pretty
that's
much
it, yeah.
that's pretty much the standard for monometal bullets, and the Hornady CXs do the same thing.
Mhm.
Pretty much any monometal bullet of traditional design of wanting to retain those petals,
Yeah.
they are built to just expand less and less and less at lower and lower impact velocities.
Mhm.
But the hammers, they're designed to expand, shed the petals, and continue with the shank down to what they're advertised to.
Right.
That's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
But-
And I will say that's honestly, you guys are the first company to convince me to use a monometal bullet.
Cool.
Previously, I had sworn them off,
Yeah.
just for multiple reasons, and I was like, I was one of those lead core bonded guys, and
I got long arguments in this studio and hunting camps. It was
yeah.
Hours and hours.
But again, like I said, I mean, due to all the testing that I've seen you guys do, you're not losing anything as far as your I don't even know what you'd want to call it, but your smack, that initial, when those hammers hit a piece of ballistics gel,
Oh yeah.
it's not a small.
It's jumping off the table.
It's
Mhm.
there's a large wound channel left
Yeah.
behind. So
Well, I can attest from the animals that I
Yeah,
shot
right.
with that 205 out of the 338 RPM last year, even just a little 205 grain bullet.
Yes.
It flattened that moose. When I had to shoot that moose of my clients that was running for the river, I've never seen a moose fall to a shot in the ribs like that before, ever.
Mhm.
But it flattened it. I mean, it went down and I could hear the air just as it, smashed it at like 50 yards. Obviously, it was pretty close, but I'm not convinced that many other bullets would have been able to pull that off and penetrate through the amount of moose that I had to go through because he was starting to quarter away.
That's the big.
And I
part.
had to hit him in the
Yeah.
back of the ribs and then angle up for that front shoulder. And that just
Mhm.
knocked the wind right out of him. Same thing with the brown bear that I had to back up shoot in the spring last year with that same gun, same bullet. Hard quartering away, running for the hills type of shot. He'd already been hit once. The client had shot him, and the client made a great shot. But in the heat of the moment, you're not 100% sure of it. You can't totally tell where he hit him. All I know is that bear is very much still alive and he's headed for the brush, and I don't want to have to go in there unless I have to. And so you put a bullet in there, again, at the back of the ribs, angled up towards the off shoulder as he's running up the bank. And it just sacked him. I mean, just straight down. Because that expansion happened so fast, I am convinced that it shocked the bottom of the spine and just broke him down. He was dead.
Yeah.
Well, I talked about that deer.
Yeah,
I shot.
it creates a massive amount of pressure when they open
Uh-huh.
and shed.
Yeah.
If they don't shed, then it doesn't create that. Some of our guys that that we call them the hammerheads. Anyhow, they get into this stuff, but they call it a bubble. And I use when they first started saying that, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But they're actually onto something, that bubble doesn't happen without the bullet shedding.
Right. And that's what I love about you guys' design.
Yeah.
If they open and hold on to it, then all they do is just get bigger and just kind of and push a small hole.
Yeah.
It's that pop of the shed that creates this bubble that creates this very large wound channel.
Yeah.
And we were talking about earlier, that shedding weight. We didn't give it any consideration until we started noticing what it was doing, and those petals shed, but they don't radiate outwards.
Mm.
And I don't want them to, and that seems to be what happens when you score a bullet or broach it and give it points where it's weak so that it can break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they tend to radiate outward. And so sometimes that might be nice if you've got a shot that's way off course, but ours will tend to track with the retained shank.
Yep.
And so then we wind up with a larger wound channel because we've got 4 little pieces flying along with it
Mm-hmm.
a little bit farther out.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you'll wind up seeing that exit hole that has maybe 3 or 4 little holes around it.
I've seen
Yeah.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
I've seen that on some of the animals that I've shot.
Those petals amazingly make it through as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that deer I shot this past, one of the deer I shot this past several months ago now. I shot it it was a little back. It was a very rushed shot, but it was a little back, quartering away, and I don't know, 2-3 inches below the spine, and there was a chunk of spine missing. And I don't know where it went. There wasn't a hole but when I was cleaning that deer later, there was a gap, like a 1-inch gap in the spine.
Yep.
From just, it vaporized the stomach. That's what's got me going now. I need a smaller gun. I'm shooting, it's a 300 short mag. I'm 3150 with those 168 HHTs. And it's just so fast and so big. And there's so much hydrostatic shock that if I had hit it where I wanted to hit it, I probably would have done some meat damage because it was just a little too big.
Yeah, maybe. I was going to ask you that earlier, Steve. Have you, because we've had that conversation quite a bit about speed versus mass as far as meat damage goes. What's your experience been with these? I know you mentioned that as part of your motivation for building.
Yeah. So overall it's less than a lead bullet, because we don't have that spray, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's a few pieces. Higher velocity, if you're shooting on the shoulder, we'll see more meat damage from bone fragment than we will from bullet fragment.
Yeah.
But depending on how the animal dies, I think sometimes you'll get more of a perceived look of blood in the meat. But if you start digging in there, it's really not in the meat. It's kind of in the membrane. Between those muscle groups. And you can just kind of scrape it out of there and the meat's clean. And I think when I say it depends on how it died, if they die very instantly, you don't see very much of that. But if their heart continues to pump, then you'll see more of that blood in the membrane. But it almost always cleans up very nicely.
Imagine so. Yeah.
It's not often that we see very much meat actually lost.
Yeah, whole shoulders
to the bullet
being cut out.
But the higher that you start getting into those impact velocities that are up near 4,000 feet per second, it tends to displace more material.
Well, to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's take a break real quick.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
Along the path of designing the perfect bullet, as you were describing earlier, not only did you guys key in the terminal performance that you wanted, but somehow you made one of the easiest to load and most accurate bullets I think any of us have ever tried.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that process. The banding of the bullets, the surface area, testing that you guys did and whatnot, and how did you land on the designs that you did?
So the drive band design that we patented, what we call the PDR, so the long short version. So when we set out to make bullets, we knew we wanted to make a drive band bullet. But there was working patents already out there on drive band bullets.
Right.
And so a banded bullet versus a grooved bullet, so the Barnes bullet has grooves in the bearing surface to reduce the amount of bearing surface.
Right.
A
Right.
drive band bullet has basically raised areas on the bearing surface to reduce the amount of contact. And we had a guy that was helping us with patent stuff, and we were coming up with ideas on bullets, and we'd take it to him, and he goes, "Well, no, you can't do that because it's stepping on this patent or that patent," And I'll never forget him telling us after one of our meetings, going, "Think out of the box. You'll come up with something." And so, meanwhile, remember, we got this lathe in my garage. We got to figure out how to get a bullet out of it so we can make some money. Yeah. And so my youngest son was still in high school, and he was doing some math homework that I vaguely remembered from when I was in school, but I was like, buddy, I can't help you with this one. And he was doing stuff with parabolas.
Okay.
And anyhow, the next morning I was taking a shower in the morning, and in the shower going, "Okay, think out of the box." you come up with something, think out of the box. I start thinking about these parabolas and the radius, and I'm like, okay, well, what if we put, radius drive bands on there versus square ones, and we'll call it parabolic drag reduction technology. And
the perfect shower thought.
That's literally where I came up with the idea of the radius drive bands, was trying to figure out a way to do it, and but it made sense. You do a radius, right? The outside diameter of that radius is very finite in the amount of material that's there,
right.
versus a square drive band. Mm-hmm. It's not finite. There's that top across the square that is all touching, where on that radius, it's super tiny, the amount of bullet that's actually making contact on the outside diameter or at the full caliber.
Right.
And so we went to him with this, and he's like, "Hey, I think you're on to something this time. We can patent this one." And so we went through the process of writing a patent, and sure enough, we got a patent. We got our provisional, I don't know, we submitted it, and we had a provisional patent inside of a month, and inside of a year we were granted a patent, which is way cool, because everything in the gun industry was patented 100 years ago.
Right.
And so to actually get a current patent in the industry is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Do you know if anybody else in the bullet manufacturing industry was making radius pressure grooves on their bullets at that time when you guys were doing that?
We couldn't find anything. That's part of making a patent, is you have to go find prior art.
Yeah.
For everything you can find that's as close as you can find to what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And submit that with your patent.
Yeah.
So that they can review it and make sure you're not doing the same thing they were doing.
Okay. Yeah.
That was previously patented. So no, I mean, of all the stuff out there, all the weird things that were out there, nothing was on a radius.
Yeah.
But it wasn't since, the 70s that, the CNC machine became reality, so the ability to make a radius cut just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And you can't swage to the radius, I don't think, at least not very easily, because you can't, I don't think I've never swaged bullets, but it's a press, and that's not going to work. Yeah. So it hadn't been done, and so our goal with that was to, solve the copper bullet issues of, too high of pressure in tight bores, poor accuracy in loose bores. Because that was the $1 million question. How big around do you make the copper bullet so that it'll seal the bore and not create too much pressure? Right. Because the lead is softer and it'll arbitrate under pressure. So when you have those bores that are tight, they'll ring down and pop through. And the bores that are loose, the pressure of the charge behind it will cause it to swell, and seal the bore. Copper won't arbitrate like that because it's harder. And so on that radius drive band, we actually can cut the bullet bigger than caliber and not create extra pressure issues in the tight ones, but still seal up the loose ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it all has to do with that finite amount. Now that accuracy thing, this easy accuracy, I wish I could say that we knew, but we didn't.
Just a blessing from above.
That's another one that I give to God. I got this great idea, for a radius drive band, and along with it comes this, what do I want to say? It's forgiving, and my layman's way to explain it, I think, the best I can come up with is because it's so finite on the amount of material on the outside of the bullet, it kind of works like a shock absorber. It's forgiving when it comes to barrel harmonics, and I think it always releases very cleanly from the end of the barrel.
Yeah.
And this is all theory. I don't know for sure why it does it, but I just know it does.
It sounds good anyway.
I'll say it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
When we first started this, I was going online and going, hey, we made a new bullet, and we load developed it, and it took us 10 shots, and this is what we got, and people would say, well, you just got lucky. And I'd say, well, yeah, you might be right. And then I remember there was one time where I was posting up on a forum, a load development we'd done and all the data from it. And somebody said, well, you just got lucky. And I said, well, you know what? I get lucky all the time.
After about the 10th time, you stop thinking it's luck.
Right. But there was a point where I'm like, you know what? No, I get lucky all the time. It's very rare that we don't have one go really easily. We still run into rifles that are problem children that we have to work on to get to shoot well. But the vast majority of load developments, we've got it figured out in 15 shots, and we're headed off to go confirm drops.
Right. Yeah. And along those lines, that's one thing I love about you guys' website and what you sell is you sell the 15 count box tester.
Yeah.
That's
one of the smarter things I ever did.
Yeah. I love that. That's amazing because you don't see that anywhere else. I mean, nowhere else can you just buy one to try it and see if your gun likes it. Without. Well,
I think that's part of the reason that so many guys don't want to try another bullet, because they wind up with another one on the shelf with all the other ones that didn't work good for them.
Yep.
Right.
Half a box of bullets up on the loading shelf.
Yeah.
And we're a more expensive bullet than most. So it's not a small investment just to try them. If you're having to buy 50 or 100 at a time, so I got the idea. Why don't we do sample packs? In all honesty, they're a pain in the butt. To just pack up that little bag of 15 bullets. But I know when somebody orders one, they're going to order more bullets.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because they were able to go try out these new bullets for 20 or 30 or 40 bucks, depending on how big the bullet is.
Right.
But they can go try them and give it a go, and 99% of the time it goes really well, and they're buying more bullets.
Yep.
Exactly.
Where I may not have got that guy to even try them if we didn't have it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and even people that are sold on the idea of the hammers and they know they want to shoot hammers, maybe you don't know exactly what grain, or maybe you don't know if you want a hunter or a shock hammer or an HHT. Like it really allows you to play around and really figure out what is your specific dialed in for
Well,
you.
and that's the thing too, is you guys have so many options. If you're shooting a 300 Win Mag or a 7 Rem Mag,
got 4 pages of bullets to choose from.
Exactly. Basically, any common bore diameter, you guys seem to have at least a dozen different bullet options, but that's because there are so many different aspects to the hunting world that, all right, well, I'm a whitetail guy. I'm shooting 100 yards or less. Well, we have 4 choices for you. Weight differences, tailored to barrel twist, because within each micro section of a style of hunting, there are different weapons that are going to like different bullets. And so you guys have that very well covered for every little aspect and every different twist rate. And you have all that information on your website. Don't shoot this bullet unless you have this twist rate. And so
that's a big deal. I got it in red writing on the top of every page.
Exactly.
Make sure you have enough twist. Because the traditional guy that's always shot the 180 grain bullet in his whatever, gun thinks he needs a 180 grain bullet in copper.
Right.
And what people don't realize is that copper bullet, because copper is 20% lighter by volume than lead, winds up 20% longer for the same weight.
Yeah.
And then needs more twist in order to stabilize it. Because the longer the bullet is, the faster you got to turn it so it doesn't wobble.
Well, and I think a lot of people misunderstand the twist rate and stability. They think the weight is the biggest factor, when in fact the length is. The weight plays a factor.
Yes.
But your length,
yes,
when you, like you said, switching back and forth between construction types, it's huge. It's a huge change.
Copper is a whole different world.
Yeah.
One of the things I was looking at, like 325 calibers, 8mm for a little while, looking at some of the Wildcat options in that, just because there's not any fast options in any factory loads for 8mm. The fastest, I think, is a 8 Rem Mag, and it's still not very fast. And from what I've read, it's a real thumper on your shoulder. But and getting something factory in that is going to be really hard with a fast twist. Because it's an older style of design, right? But one thing, I was talking to Dalton about it. He goes, "Well, that's not a good he said, that's not a good ballistic size, right?" And what I realized was, it's not the fact that the size wasn't good ballistically. It's the fact there weren't any cartridges that were designed for 8mm taking advantage of that size. Like, the longer and heavier the bullet, the better it is ballistically, right? I mean, that seems to be. So they're just, but you have to push it at fast enough speed and twist it fast enough to make it worth it.
Right.
And hammer bullets make it so you can pick almost any caliber, neck down. You're given a cartridge so you can shoot it fast enough, and you can shoot that bullet and get good ballistics out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, and even the HHTs that you guys have just come out with, we had a listener write in with a Creedmoor question and what he should shoot in his 6.5. And what I liked was that you guys had I think it was the 118 grain 6.5 HHT, and then also I think it was a 123, if I'm remembering correctly.
Well, 125.
125, okay. And but they were, they're set up for different twist rates. One's a 1 and 8, one's a 1 and 9, and so you're in that same ballpark of weight if you want to shoot somewhere around the 120 mark. 125 mark, but you're able to cater to your rifle. What does your rifle have already? And so you don't have to choose super heavy if you don't want heavy. You don't have to choose light if you don't want light.
Yeah.
I love that you guys have given that many options. That's when you said we make too many bullets. I'm like, no. Like, I love it. It's one of my favorite things about hammers.
and now we're in the process of filling all those lines in with more HHTs.
Yeah.
So we'll wind up with basically as many HHTs as we have hammer hunters. But you bring up the Creedmoor, and that was a great one because it's wildly popular. It's I think in some ways driven our industry. You know, 6.5 bullets are by far our best selling.
Yeah.
You know, well, not maybe by far, but they are the best selling ones, 6.5, and I think most of it's because of Creedmoors. You know, but then they've spawned the PRCs and all these other 6.5s that have become popular now. But yeah, that Creedmoor, I was never interested in it.
It's a great grizzly gun.
You know, yeah. and T-Rex too, right?
Exactly.
I was never interested in it until we were at the range one day, and one of our local customers was at the range with a 20-inch Seiko Creedmoor, and he was shooting our little 85 grain Hammer Hunter. And out of that 20-inch barrel, he's running them at 3,500 feet per second.
Good night.
Whoa.
And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. This looks interesting to me now. So I built one then. You know, and my wife shot it in Africa when we went last time, and she killed all of her game with that little 85 grain. Well, actually, she shot the golden wildebeest with the 85 grain, and then from that point on, then because we had just got our first prototypes of the tip, and from that point on, she was hunting with the 118 tip bullet.
Wow!
But that little 85 grain bullet decked that golden wildebeest, going 35-20 out of my 20-inch suppressed Creedmoor.
Wow.
That's amazing.
I might have to, I've been anti-Creedmoor for a long time just because it's the fanboy thing to do, but I might have to get
everybody runs the 147 ELDMs, or it's like, but I never thought about dropping the weight down that much.
Well, you think about it, you run that, and now we've got the 80 grain tip bullet that'll run 3,600 plus out of the Creedmoor.
Oh man!
And at 400 yards, the impact velocity of that 80 grain is faster than the 147 at the muzzle.
That's amazing.
So,
wow.
You think about that. At 400 yards, it's impacting faster than the muzzle velocity of a 147.
Oh my,
bro!
I think I know what I'm taking deer hunting next year.
Right?
That is screaming.
I've got a 6.5 PRC, and I've been wanting to order some of those absolute hammers just to see what I can crank out. You guys have those ones?
I would avoid that one in the PRC.
You think so?
Yeah, you don't
really need it.
You have to fiddle around to find the powder that'll work. But what we found with the absolute is the more efficient the cartridge is, the less velocity gain we see from the absolute.
Okay.
So those inefficient cartridges like a 7 mag or a 30-06,
right,
we see monster gains in velocities out of those.
Yeah.
But the highly efficient ones, the newer cartridge designs, not as much.
Okay, gotcha.
And so for the extra 100 feet and the work you've got to do to find that powder that'll get it for you, run the 125 grain in the PRC. We can run those things at like 3450, and it's fantastic.
Wow.
Just an absolute laser beam.
Yeah.
The Northern Hunters go like caliber.
I mean, I see why you guys paired up with Weatherby. I mean, it's a perfect marriage in there. I mean, perfect.
Absolutely.
So, kind of a question along those lines with the absolute plethora of options on your website. I mean, are these all like more shower thoughts that you had that just ended up on the website?
Shower thoughts.
Is it like customer suggestions, like, hey, could you make something like this? And you're like, yeah, no problem. Like, or how did you get to this much?
Probably a little bit of all of it.
Okay, yeah.
So the absolute design. That one's that Wildcat of our bullets. That one came about when we were figuring out that. I'll back up for a second. every now and then we would see a rifle that would make the BC of a hammer hunter go bad, right? And couldn't figure out why. And I had a customer that called me up one day, and we're going through all of his data, and he's hitting, at 600 yards, 700 yards, someplace in there. He's hitting 3 feet lower than he should, for what the BC should be. And going through all of his dope and he's doing everything right. And I can't, and so then in the conversation, it was like, do you have another 6 mil? He was shooting a 6 millimeter. And in the conversation, it came up, that he had intentionally made the bore of his gun 1 thou tighter.
Okay.
Because he found better accuracy in competition with that tighter bore.
Right.
And then I was like, well, geez, do you have another 6 millimeter? And he says, yeah, I do. I've got another one. I said, well, if you don't mind, would you shoot it and see where the drops are? Shoots it, and the drops are right on. And then it's like, okay, so the only difference here is the tightness of the bore. And so what we figured out is that bore is engraving farther out on the ogive, which was causing the BC to go down.
Right.
So my bright idea is, well, let's make a bullet that can't be engraved on the ogive. We'll fix this. We'll make a bullet that can't be touched by the rifling until it gets to the full diameter of first drive band. Right. And we knew that the engraving pressure was going to be reduced by quite a bit by doing it. And so the bullet's been marketed not for the reason we came up with it, but because it's got this huge velocity potential.
Right.
Yeah. But we were trying to solve an issue of engraving on the nose causing BC to plummet.
Right.
So that's how we cooked that one up. And then the other ones, they were all kind of logical. We wanted that kind of blunt nose, normal range hunting bullet for the shock hammers, and and a pointy, short bearing surface, long boat tail bullet, and that's the hammer hunter. And then now the tipped version of the hammer hunter.
I was gonna say, what's the I see here on your website you have the shock hammers and the power hammers. Now, we've talked a little bit about this on the show, and we weren't 100% sure what answer to give people. So, since we have you here.
Yeah. So the hammer hunters, they're all 1.5 millimeter hollow points. The shock hammers are all bigger than that, right? And so we were coming out with varying sizes of hollow points in the shock hammer line, and for the most part, they were all 2.5 millimeters. And then as you got into the bigger calibers, they go into 3, 4, and even 1/4 inch hollow points.
Yeah, I have the 300 grainers for my 4570, and it's a 1/4 inch.
Yeah,
goodness.
Yeah, and then we started messing around with a 2 millimeter hollow point, which is what the power hammer is.
Okay, gotcha.
And so in the beginning, the first ones we did, we called them shock hammers because they weren't hammer hunters. So they're not hammer hunters, makes them a shock hammer. But we started, and this is about the time we started paying more attention to that shedding of weight from the nose. So the power hammer became a hammer hunter with a 2 millimeter hollow point. So instead of the 80% weight retention of the shock hammers, we did that little longer nose. They're shaped very much like the hammer hunter, but with a little bit bigger hollow point. And so we decided we should give them their own name.
Gotcha.
And named them the power hammer.
Okay.
So they're kind of a hybrid between hammer hunter and shock hammer.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's what I shot all last year was that 205 power hammer out of that 338 Weatherby RPM.
Yep.
Yeah. See, and I think that's a perfect weight bullet for the 338 Win Mag and the Weatherby RPM. It's nice right there. It gets us into that 3,000-ish feet per second muzzle velocity, which is where I think things start to shine.
Yeah, I agree. No, it has performed without a hitch on multiple different sizes of game, all the way down from black-tailed deer up to brown bear and moose without problems.
Yeah.
See, and that's pretty cool. You know, brown bear and moose, you know, most people are going to look at you and go, you know, that's not big enough for those.
Yeah.
You know, and here you can, you don't, you know, you're not guessing at it. You're not saying, oh, I think it's big enough. You're actually out there doing it.
Yeah.
And have done it before with other stuff, and you're seeing great performance out of a 200 grain class pill.
Exactly.
In a 338, which is that's way cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. I do think that next spring, I know you and I have talked about this here recently, but next spring I'm going to go back to my 375 Ruger just so I can shoot that 270 grain shock hammer, because I really want to use that on a brown bear next.
Yeah.
But
and that bullet's pretty cool. That one's staying with the shock hammer name, but it's a little different design than most of the shock hammers.
Yeah.
Little bit smaller hollow point. You know, that's a 3mm hollow point, and that design came from the first bullets that we designed for a 30-30 lever action tube feed. Right?
Okay.
So we took the 30 cal and we put a 3mm hollow point in it, and then put a little extra meat around the meat plat, so that it would ride around the outside edges of the primer and have some surface area and not cause primer damage in the tube feed. Well, and then again, we designed that to run in a tube feed, but then we start shooting animals with it, and it's like, whoa, there's something to this extra meat on that big hollow point. It opens easy, but now we got bigger pieces of shed material coming off of it. And so we've now taken that design and adapted it into some of the other stuff, like that 270 grain shock hammer. It's that 3mm hollow point with extra meat around it. And
I think that is going to be bad news for brown bears.
Well proven on dangerous stuff. That's a great pill.
Yeah. Well, I am thoroughly convinced that for all of my interior guiding work, that 205 grain power hammer and the 338 RPM is the perfect marriage of velocity and weight and terminal performance. I can shoot that out to 400 or 500 yards if I need to on a personal hunt, and it gives me a lightweight rifle package overall to carry on a sheep hunt with still enough poop to stop a grizzly bear if we end up shooting a bear on a sheep hunt, which seems to happen a lot on some of these guiding combo packages. So I think that's a great gun for the interior. But first year in use, and I wanted to try it on everything. I wanted to shoot a brown bear with it. I wanted to shoot a moose with it, and all the way down to a black-tailed deer and a black bear, and it worked every single time. So
I think you're on that RPM lightweight rifle doesn't kick the crap out of you. And you got, but you got that 338 diameter, I think, which is where I think, magic things start to happen as far as stopping power.
Yes.
What you're carrying, that Mark V, I think, right?
Yeah. It's the little 18-inch barreled backcountry Mark V.
Yeah.
Right,
I've got the same one, but
setup.
I have the same caliber, same setup, except I got the Apex with the 24-inch barrel. So
okay, So how much more velocity do you get out of that than he does?
Probably 300 feet per second.
Yeah, easy 300. Yeah.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had brought up dangerous game, and I wasn't sure if we were going to have time to talk about this one, but I wanted to touch on your claw hammer design. Is that something you're looking at expanding? I see there's only like the 3 or 4 options here.
Yeah, we've been working on it. We've been working on it a lot here this last year.
Yeah.
And playing with some different designs, and that trip that we made to Australia back in July, that was a big part of that trip, was to go test solids on water buffalo.
Yeah.
I have a new appreciation for that animal. I think that's I believe that's the hardest animal on the planet to kill.
From everything I've heard, I'm inclined to agree with you. I've never tried putting a bullet in one yet, but when I get to that tax bracket, I will, and I'll find out. So.
Yeah, I think Australia is kind of a hidden secret. I don't think it's that expensive, but maybe it's not now, huh?
Whoops.
Yeah, those things have like two plus. The big bulls have like 2+ inches of hide, and it's a different kind of hide. They told me the Aussies were telling me this stuff ahead of time, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. We've been to Africa. Those animals are tough. They're not going to be any different, man. I think you can over-engineer a bullet for a water buffalo and have it be too much for the other stuff.
Yeah.
Finding that bullet that works perfectly on a water buffalo, I think really winds up being harder than it needs to be for elephants and hippos and Cape buffalo.
Right.
They're a different cat. It's amazing. And you get that thing on the ground, and with a good sharp hunting knife, you can't hardly cut through the hide.
Wow.
The Aussies, they use, give me the Stanley knife, mate. So they carry construction utility knives.
Oh, really?
And that way you can grab that knife with 2 hands and pull it through that hide with a brand new razor blade in it. And that's what they would use to skin the buffalo.
Goodness.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Take out the chainsaw.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyway, sorry about that. I got sidetracked on buffalo. But yeah, no, we're working on that claw hammer design. I think, we've got a couple on the website that we made, a few years ago, and I think we're probably changing that design a little bit.
Okay, gotcha.
After doing some more testing and whatnot. I think we're pretty well settled on the design, and we're probably going to wind up doing some in brass.
Okay, gotcha.
That's super hard.
Yeah.
I thought we could do it with just our copper, but when you start getting up into that 50 cal and bigger,
right.
there's so much force put against that bullet, it has to get harder. Right? The frontal diameter's so much bigger, and the bullet hits hard, but it also gets hit hard back.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it causes more deformation on that bullet than we want to see in a solid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially with that kind of just bold face it has. I mean, it's not piercing its way through anything. It's pushing.
Right. So. It's already in its terminal form. Right. It doesn't need to change on impact. It's already there before it hits.
Yeah.
That is its terminal design right from the get-go. But it's interesting, the African PHs, they're thrilled with that solid that mushrooms just a little bit. Those guys are all over that, but the Aussies are like, no, mate, that's no good. And so, we can't have any deformation, but there's a lot of those traditional solid guys don't want to have a bullet that deforms at all.
Right.
Right. If that bullet's soft enough to deform, then it's not a solid.
Right.
And that's the traditional mindset of solids. I personally, I'm not much of a solid guy. I don't think they have much great use other than that PH that has a client that can't shoot very good, and he needs to run one up the ass of an elephant so they don't have to chase it.
Yeah.
So they don't chase it for 3 days after the client wounded it.
Right.
You might have to cut that out. People get upset about elephants. Yeah. Maybe it's okay.
No.
Maybe it's okay on your show. I don't know.
It's going to stay in, Steve.
Yeah, we
It's-
don't care.
that's the reality of hunting.
It's a hunting podcast.
That's the real world.
But that's where a solid makes sense. Is that professional hunter that's got to back up his client that made a bad shot, and hopefully get one, from a bad angle into the vitals of an animal, and not have it
Right.
run off and be a long process that nobody wants to see. But when it comes to just sheer terminal performance, the shock hammers work better.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, the guys in Africa, Trophy Game Safari, they're shooting elephants with 300 grain in the 416 and penetrating one side of an elephant to the other.
Really? That's amazing.
And yeah, it's cool. But those shock hammers, they penetrate like crazy. Plus, you get that shock, But on those stupid water buffalo, the shock hammer will open up and shed before it gets through the 2 or 3 inches of hide.
Goodness.
And so you don't get that pop from the shed on the inside of the animal, and all you've got is just that solid going through. But it lost some of its poop getting through the hide.
Right.
And so the solid there on those guys, and that's another reason we came up with like that 270 grain design, with a little more meat on the nose to try and delay that opening a bit on that water buffalo hide. And those work great for that. They'll get through that hide before they shed.
Perfect.
And then we get all that shock inside the vitals,
right?
And still have that shank and everything that's going to pass through with the pedals. So solids, dangerous game solids. It's we're learning about them. I think we have our design figured out now, though.
Perfect.
Cool.
Perfect.
Very
Well,
cool.
I'm excited to see them. I just had one last question for you. I know it's getting late, but this is by far one of our favorite parts about hammer bullets. All of us love this one factor that will hopefully continue, but it's when we go to the website and there's this huge selection of bullets. There's a banner above just about every one of them says in stock, ready to ship. Even through COVID, all this other stuff, it's like, which became a high rarity when you're looking for any other kind of bullet on the web.
Yeah.
Everything's, back order this, back order that.
Yeah.
We'll, put in your email. We'll let you know when we have some. With such a design or so many different designs, I mean, are these tailor-made per order? Is that how you pull this off, or do you just have like a warehouse full of these?
Someplace in between there. When we first started and we had that little lathe in my garage, I was cutting a la carte. So kind of like the fry cook in the greasy spoon. Spin the wheel, next order up, okay, set the program, and I'd cut 50 of these and I'd cut those, and then next one up and I'd set the machine and cut that order. So I was cutting to the order, and then we started to get busy and I started falling behind and I couldn't keep up. And that's when we moved into our current shop location. And at that time, that was when we bought our first big Swiss screw machine. And we vowed then never to fall behind again, because we didn't want to be another one of those great bullet companies, but you can't get them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Those are great bullets, but you can't get them. We didn't want to be that guy. And So we've made sure that we have enough backstock on raw material that we won't run out. And we've made sure that we have enough shop space that we can add more machines when we have to. And so we've kept ourselves in that position that we're just stay ahead of it. And that's the goal, is to stay that way.
That's perfect, because you know there's nothing more frustrating than being on your last 10 rounds of something and you just can't find more anywhere.
Yeah. You know, with business in general, especially a lot of smaller and local businesses, you don't see that willingness to put the effort and the money into always having what people want when they want it. Another facet of the company I work for is sheet metal production. And what is interesting is when you always have what the customer wants and you're always able to produce it, if you walk into the office at the company, other facet of the company I work for, and you want to order sheet metal, unless it's a special order item, and everything's made to order except for a few pieces like trim and things that are pretty standard. Everything's made to order when you order it. Even custom design trim. If it's like a custom siding order and we've got to actually order in metal, then it's, weeks. But if it's anything else, it's same day, next day turnaround. And to keep that up, my boss buys, we get loads and loads and loads of sheet metal in all the time to always have that backstock like you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
In a given year, it seems like there's another $1 million in equipment going into the shop, and we're taking other things out of the shop. Like, well, this can't be here anymore because we've got to put this in here to keep this production up. But because he's willing to put that effort in, the customer base keeps growing, and it keeps growing, and it keeps growing, because everybody else in town, it's a 2-week wait.
Yeah,
you go order something, it's 2 weeks. Period.
Yeah.
And
it or longer,
right? And so the business model of actually having And same thing goes, if you want, in Fairbanks, if you want to find somebody to do some custom woodwork for you, even the biggest name in town, which is a local company, and they're nice people, I like them, but they're weeks out. And then they'll call you and say, oh, this is going to cost you twice as much as we quoted you. The whole business model of honesty, right? But of just being ready, of serving the customer, which is just having what people want is part of serving the customer. I really appreciate that. And being part of another business, I know how much work goes into that. And like I said, watching $1 million of equipment go into a shop in a very short period of time, I have a little bit of appreciation. Yeah. Exactly. It's not my money, but I'm sitting here going, well, I hope, my boss is doing well and everything he's running and all the companies are doing really well. And I'm grateful for that. I work for a good guy, but it's not my money, but yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's scary because we've done the same thing, and every time it looks like, geez, maybe we might start making some money. We wind up buying another piece of equipment for $250,000.
Right.
Right. And it's too expensive for what it does. But if we don't do it, we can't advance. So we have to do it. It's like, right now we're in the process of getting a tipping machine made so that you guys don't have to put tips in the HHTs. And that thing is way too expensive for what it does.
Right.
But we have to do it.
Right.
For the most part, guys like you and me, it's not that big of a deal to go put in 50 or 100 tips.
If anything, it's kind of enjoyable, right? Like,
yeah, after 300, I'm done.
Yeah. I'll say after 300,
it does get tired.
I've had enough after that, but Weatherby can't hire a bunch of people to sit there and put in tips when they're doing a 20,000 bullet run.
Right.
And I can't hire people to do it either. It's just not. It's not going to happen. So we've got to buy this piece of equipment so that we can move forward with that line of bullets, and the guys like Weatherby can put them in their ammo. And there's those guys out there like, I'm not putting tips in. And I'm like, I get it, and I've been questioning that. Why would you market something that a guy has to put it in? I'm like, well, I didn't want to wait a year to bring it to market.
Right.
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 You know,
And there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are willing to put that
piece
in.
of equipment.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people that are willing to put that
You
in are
know?
very grateful you released them. So, it's all,
You know, and so plus, you know, the sooner we get it out there, the sooner we can start, you know, getting some income off of that to cover, you know, a year of testing and all that stuff that it took to bring it to market, you know.
right.
All that stuff plays in there. It all time, right? Time is money. Everything takes
Right.
time to get done, and somehow you gotta. If you don't recoup it, you don't stay in business.
Yep.
You know, and so as soon as we felt like it was a done product, darn right, we're bringing it to market. We're gonna have people put them in themselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know,
I would say that was absolutely the right move. 100%.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Thank you.
If the people don't want to put the tips in themselves, they can wait the year for the machine to come
Yeah.
out. You know, that's something they've put on
Yeah.
themselves. You know, that's not something you imposed on them. That's a limitation they have on themselves. So,
Yeah.
well, of the many reasons we've given people to get hammer bullets today and to try them out at least, I know I've seen on you guys' social medias and the website and whatnot, you guys are really actively partnering with other companies and working with other companies to try and get these bullets out into more people's hands and make them more available to people maybe that aren't keen to reloading themselves or things like that. What are some options? Like what are the ways people can get hammer bullets other than just going to the website?
direct from the website. You know,
Yeah.
I'd say, you know, still today, you know, probably 95% of our business is direct to consumer. You know,
Right.
The one order at a time from an individual just coming to the website. You know, but then, you know, we get Weatherby's on board. They would be our biggest account.
Mm-hmm.
And they're loading hammers in, you know, in quite a few different cartridges now, and have intent of loading hammers in all of their cartridges. You know, so as time goes on, so that one's pretty cool. You know, and then there's a bunch of you know, custom ammunition companies, you know, for that guy that doesn't reload, that work with hammer bullets.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know if you want me to try and list them here or not.
No, just the not all of them. I'm sure that's a lot to list off the top of the memory.
Yeah, there's 6 or 8 different companies that are loading hammers, you know, on a smaller scale, more of a custom type load.
Like choice and whatnot.
You know, and then and then we've got we used to do custom ammunition for guys, but I just don't have time to turn the rifles around quick enough. But we've got a guy here in Montana that does it very well, and that's all he does is load develop rifles. That's what he does for a living.
Lucky guy.
And so, and so a customer could send their rifle to him, and he'll actually develop a load for the rifle and ship it back with the ammo, which is very cool.
Perfect.
Do you want to drop his name and company, or is he going to hate us for increasing his business?
I don't know. Yeah, let's drop it. Hang on, let me get his phone number out here.
I just know that I've met a few people up here that have talked about that, and some people that have the means to do something like that, but they've said, you know, I just don't reload, and it looks like a really neat bullet, but I'm just not going to do it myself. And so for someone like that might be a decent option, as long as the elevation for the load development for down there versus up here isn't too drastic.
Maybe I should change up what I'm doing on the weekends.
There you go.
And just start
Do some
reload.
load. I get a lot of experience, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're hammers, so it only takes 15 bullets anyway.
Right.
Just learn on the fly.
Okay, so his name is Paul Henstridge.
Okay.
And his phone number is 406-369-5876.
Well, there you go.
And So
You heard it here.
yeah, Paul's day job is he does all the load development for Snowy Mountain Rifles.
Okay.
So all of their custom rifles, he's the guy that does all the shooting and load develops those rifles. And then whenever he's, and then he also will load for individuals, through us or whatever, and load hammers for them.
Interesting. Well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, if any of you guys out there want a load developed for you,
there you go.
You heard it here. Yeah.
And
Paul Holler, I don't remember where he's from, but he's got a great accent, right? Yeah, he's European of some sort, but got a great accent, pretty hard. And I can hear him calling me now. What did you do?
Gave you some advertising, man. Come on.
We're gonna get you some more business loading rifles.
Yeah.
And for people that want to, look at what has been done reloaded, you guys have an awesome forum on your website, the Hammer Time forum. I like seeing what other people are doing and how, the different ideas being thrown around, and even a new kind of load data section of the website. That's
So there's one of the forums there in the reloading section. There's a thread there where they've been compiling consumer data now for quite a few years. So it's just, it's that internet stuff out there, right? So it's just, guys like you or me or whatever that, hey, I did this load development with a hammer, and this is my data. And so they've been compiling that into a spreadsheet now for several years. And I've always stayed out of it because it's not my data.
Right.
If that makes sense, it's not my data. I'm fine with those guys doing it. It's a guys sharing data with each other, and that's great. But it's not my data, and I didn't test it and approve it and say, yeah, this is good.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's a great resource,
right?
But it's just that it's a resource. Well, it's just that.
And like with everything in reloading, proceed with caution. Just because it worked for one guy's rifle doesn't mean yours is a carbon copy and it will magically work in yours either.
Don't take some internet load out there that some guy on the internet that this is my load, my max load. Don't go out there and take some guy's max load and run it.
You're right. Right.
It might not be a good idea.
Yeah.
But
no.
Yeah, the Hammer Time forum, that was another great idea. I didn't do it right the first time. I just went and got one of those free forum hosting sites and started this thing, not really knowing or thinking if it would be anything good, and anyhow, the busier the forum got, the more it cost me to keep it on that free hosting, right?
Right.
It's free until you start using enough data.
Yep.
And anyhow, so we decided to host our own forum. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the several years that we had it on the free site, that all of that stuff that was on there is owned by them, so we couldn't migrate it over.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so we basically, I told the membership, I said, okay, if there's anything on here that you want, copy and paste it.
Right.
I had two forums for a little while, two forums up at the same time, and I'm like, copy and paste anything you think is important and bring it over, and then on such and such a date, we're going to turn that one off.
Yep, I remember when that was going on.
Yeah, and so we lost a lot of great stuff, but now that we host it, it's actually part of our website, which helps Google notice Hammer Bullets, which then helps drive traffic to Hammer Bullets, all that kind of stuff. all that stuff that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but was recommended that we should do that. And so we did. Now we own our own forum, and it's a great group of guys. It's small enough that you don't have the normal forum stuff where you got a group of people that are just looking to call somebody stupid and
Right.
you know
Right.
all that forum stuff that's yucky. We don't have any of that, and it's very well self-policed by the guys on there. Great group of guys. They poke fun at each other all the time. You know, so if you're new and you go on there, it looks like maybe they're being mean to each other, but they're just kind of doing what normal guys do.
Right.
They're not actually trying to be mean to each other.
Well, if you're not giving your buddy a hard time, then is he really your buddy?
You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and if your buddy can't take it when you give him a hard time, I'm not sure he should be your buddy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You hit it on the head there.
But yeah, the great group of guys, no dumb questions. If you go on there and ask a question, nobody's going to go, hey, well, you know, we've already talked about this, or, you know, that's a stupid question, or why would you do that? You know, there is none of that. And those guys all kind of pride themselves on no dumb questions.
Right.
You know, ask away, and there's a great group of guys on there that'll pop in and do everything they can to help anybody.
Right on.
So,
good.
Yeah, it's a nice forum.
Perfect. Well, Steve, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and spending the time with us. And I think we went a little bit past our mark, but I think that's okay, hopefully. So
yeah, about an hour.
It's not like us at all. But no, I really appreciate you coming on here, and you know, we've done our best to try and explain, you know, these things to listeners when we get questions and our recommendations and whatnot. But it's been absolutely wonderful hearing it directly from you and the science and everything. So thank you so much for that. Why don't you let people know how, you know, how they can get a hold of you guys if they have any questions or anything like that, or see what you're doing, your social medias and stuff like that. What's the best way for people to find you guys?
So, you know, our website, hammerbullets.com, at the top of the page, there's mine and Brian's phone numbers. At the top of the page, we do everything we can to answer every phone call that comes in. And if we can't get to it, we try to call them back. You know, we kind of figure that he and I need to be the ones that answer the phone, not hiring somebody else to do it.
Right.
You know,
nobody's reading off a template when they're talking to the customer.
Right. So when you call, you're either going to get me or Brian, and we're the guys that, you know, that brained this stuff up. You know, so you get us. And then social media, I generally don't do. We did hire a guy to do that. So the Facebook and the Twitter and whatever else he's doing out there. But yeah, we have a Hammer Bullets Facebook page. Ed runs that. He's a great guy.
Yep, I follow you guys on Instagram as well. So
okay, yeah. See, that would be
you
Ed,
got one of those.
That does that. Yeah, we got one of those. I've never seen it. I can't stand it. I don't even know how to get on Instagram.
Instaface, Spacegram.
It's all right. You only have to give up a few freedoms to be on social media, Steve.
Yeah, just agree to get spied on and all this other stuff.
Just sign here, sir. Just sign right here.
I signed up for that WhatsApp. They got access to everything in my phone, I think.
Oh yeah. I just had to download that for my overseas trip and
right. All the guys overseas all use WhatsApp, so I have WhatsApp now. Yeah.
Yep. Well, along those lines, I also wanted to thank you very much for anybody that hasn't figured it out after listening to the show. Hammer Bullets is a sponsor of the Northern Hunter, so I wanted to thank you for being a sponsor and believing in what we're doing here as well, and helping us along with our endeavors. You guys have been generous enough to provide us with a discount code, so anybody that goes to hammerbullets.com, if you would be so kind as to use the code The Northern Hunter with your purchase, that is the way Hammer Bullets and us work together, is through that code. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you very much for believing in us and helping us along as well. So,
Yes. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you guys very much as well. And hey, I had a great time. If we want to do it again, I'm open.
Awesome.
We'll be doing it again.
I'm sure there'll be plenty in the future.
Yes, sir.
So maybe one of these days we can hit our bucket list and come up and hunt moose with you guys or something.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we can make that happen.
Yeah. We'll have your people call our people and we'll get it set up. All right, folks. Well, if you enjoyed what you heard on the show today, make sure you like on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to it on, and share it with any friends that might be interested in Hammer Bullets. A lot of great information here. If you have any questions about anything talked about, obviously you can reach out to Steve directly. But if you would like to talk to us, if you go to thenorthernhunter.com, we have the contact button there. You can reach out and get an email directly to the show, and we will either answer your question or get you in touch with the guy that knows the answer. Mm-hmm. We have our social medias on Instagram and Facebook currently, and if you search at The Northern Hunter on either one of those two platforms, you can get us a message there as well and see what we're up to. And thank you guys so much for listening. Steve, it's been a wonderful time. And until next week, get out there, get after it. And good luck. We'll see you there.